Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast, post-game instant reaction, Facebook Live from Ohio State's 76-5 win over
Miami
of Ohio. This was, I knew that, by the way.
Thanks for including me.
You're welcome. I just wanted to get you involved. Oh, hey, I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. And we just got done watching an Ohio State team that obliterated Miami. But first, Tom, before we get to the missed extra point that I know you want to talk about, we'll spend like 30 minutes on that one. Ohio State comes out probably having just watched prohibitive Big Ten favorite Michigan go on the road to Madison and lose, knowing that, hey, if Michigan has lost, then maybe there's a chance for the Buckeyes in the Big Ten this year. And so I think maybe they were a little distracted in this game. Started out down 5-0, and then you're thinking, oh no, maybe this is the weekend where all of maybe the Big Ten's best teams, not saying Ohio State is one of them, not along with Michigan, but maybe this is where something bad happens. But then, no, there was a lot of good that happened here for the Buckeyes, and it just kept happening and happening. 42 points in the second quarter alone. I've never seen anything like that. And at some point, you're thinking the points are coming so fast that you forget some of those touchdowns that happened. They were like, didn't this just happen? Didn't we? And it was 42 points. The most points I can ever remember in a quarter is 35 a couple of times. The Redskins and Broncos in the Super Bowl. Ohio State said over the PA that they scored 34 points in a quarter against Florida A&M. But this was a whole new thing. This is video game stuff.
Yeah, this was video game stuff on junior varsity level.
Yes.
When you schedule like Norfolk State at the beginning of the year, like, well, let's just get some points and get some stats.
Some stats.
It was remarkable because to have 6 drives in a quarter, like 6 possessions in a quarter, is amazing. You could go. There are games where teams are running the ball. I would bet there was probably at least one half when Michigan didn't have 6 possessions today. Ohio State had 6 possessions in one quarter, cashed all of them for touchdowns. Time of possession on those drives: 37 seconds, 29 seconds, 3 minutes and 57 seconds, 54 seconds, 26 seconds, 1 minute and 13 seconds. Like they didn't even have like a decisive time of possession advantage in that quarter. They had, in the entire first half, they only had the ball 12 minutes, and they scored 42 points in a quarter. Like it was like you said it. You literally could not keep up with all the stuff that was happening.
No, and those last 3 touchdowns of the half, which is when things really went crazy, it was a 28-yard drive, a 20-yard drive, and a 33-yard drive, and I believe that was a strip sack, a blocked punt, and a strip sack, giving Ohio State some remarkable field position there. And credit to them, they punched it in, and we saw how effective Justin Fields is with that read option down inside the 5-10 yard line. And that's not the first time. But it is easy to see that being a staple this season. Whereas, JT would do that, but it was almost always JT's just going to keep it and go. And maybe we'll eventually see that with Justin Fields. But he is pulling that ball back so well, so late, ends up crashing in on J.K. Dobbins or whomever is in, and then he just goes right around and might have to make one guy miss, but that's not too big of a problem for him right now. And that running game, even though, they 220-some or 200-some yards, I thought maybe they would go 300 this week, but they were more focused on throwing the ball. They wanted to put some balls up in the air, so that limited their running, but it didn't limit the running game's effectiveness.
Whatever Ohio State didn't do this week, it was because Ohio State didn't care about it and didn't try to do it. If Ohio State had set their mind to 1,000 yards of total offense or 150 points, like there's a decent chance if they had really applied themselves and kept the starters in, they probably could have done just about anything they wanted to. You mentioned Fields and running that kind of read option play. I was thinking about this today. Do you remember 2 years ago talking about how a lot of teams were really crashing down on the running backs because they knew Mike Weber, J.K. Dobbins, they can go 60 yards if you don't take them. J.T. Barrett was not going to go 60 yards. You're going to give up 6 to 8 yards to J.T. Barrett specifically so you just keep things in front of you and all that. Justin Fields is like, which guy do you want to risk going 60 yards, J.K. Dobbins or Justin Fields? Because you got to pick one, and there is no good choice there.
And I think they're doing a wise thing right now. They don't want to get him hit a lot right now, so you run him down there where once you're across those 6 yards, you don't have to worry about getting hit or taking a dive or anything like that. I think they'll be breaking that out in their own territory moving forward. This coming week against Nebraska, you pull everything out, you do what you can, and you get the win any way you can. I thought it was interesting. We get back from the game up to the press box, and you look at the box score, and it's Steel Chambers leading the team with 63 yards rushing on 8 carries. I got to watch a little bit of him. I'll be honest, I did not go out in the rain today.
Well, if you're watching on our Facebook Live feed, you can probably guess that I did go out in the rain today. Have a lovely picture of Steel Chambers' first career touchdown.
And there you go. And that's why you did it. And it was good to see him out there. And that was one of the stories for me, is all of the freshmen. I remember, I think 2 weeks ago, or maybe for the Florida-Atlanta game, one of my predictions was that there would be like 3 true freshmen that would score that week. And, of course, none of them did. But this week you had Garrett Wilson, you had Jameson Williams, you had Steel Chambers, and I think that's 3 right there. And those were the big 3. And the impact that those guys have.
Marcus Crowley had a receiving touchdown.
Yes,
too.
he did. That's 4. So there was the other one. I thought there was another one in there. And all of those guys got a lot of action in the second half to show what they could do. And it has to be reassuring, or it just makes the coaches feel good, and even their older teammates feel good when they see those things realized in the game. When you see Jameson Williams take like a 10-yard in route, catch it, turn, and then
just turn on the jets.
We knew as soon as he turned, and if he's even, as they say, he's leaving. And that was good to see. Chris Olave was happy to see that, and I know Ryan Day and everybody else was. And we haven't gotten to see a lot of Jameson Williams, but we knew at some point that was going to happen this year.
Well, we've talked about Jameson Williams a couple times on the podcast before, specifically about his high school highlight tape.
Yeah.
And if you go back and watch that, it is, and you can just search Jameson Williams on the Ozone and scroll back and find his commitment piece, you'll find it. It's just a bunch of fastest guy on the field that you've ever seen, just blasting past completely overmatched defenders. This was not like, small school Missouri, private school football, high school teams. This wasn't Clemson, but this is a MAC team. This is a Division I FCS team. And it was just like the Roadrunner, just catch, beep, beep, boom, gone. And he was pulling away from defensive backs, visibly pulling away from defensive backs.
With each step.
Yeah. And between that and the Garrett Wilson, incredible Garrett Wilson catch, the Garrett Wilson punt return,
52 yards, I believe.
Yeah, you've heard a whole bunch of hype about these freshman receivers. Today it was like, if you haven't seen it before, we've kind of seen it to practice a few times. If you haven't seen it before, it was kind of like, oh, okay, no, they weren't kidding. This is coming, and it's coming pretty quick.
Well, and they forced the ball into Garrett Wilson a couple of times early on, trying to get something to happen, and then they would let him get down the field twice. He led the team with 4 catches for 54 yards. The 54 yards was third best on the team because of the long passes that Ben Victor. No, not even Ben Victor. He had a 30-yarder in there, too.
KJ Hill.
Yeah, there's Ben Victor, 42 yards. But there were some deep passes in there. But what he can do when the ball is in the air, Garrett Wilson, I can't compare him to other receivers of recent history at Ohio State. There's always Chris Carter. When you compare somebody to just position and able to get his hands up in strong hands and bring balls down in traffic. I tweeted that on that one touchdown catch that Garrett Wilson turns 50-50 balls into 80-20 balls. And then talking to Chris Olave after the game, he said the exact same thing. And Tom, as we talked about in the press box, that not only means that the team listens to the podcast, but they also will follow us on Twitter during the game while it's going on. And
pretty disrespectful.
Right, but you hope that they do this only in blowouts. I don't know that that's the case, but it's those two guys. that they're just going to be sophomores next year with Chris Olave, and then the guys coming in, but we don't need to go into 2020 just yet.
Yeah.
But it's fun to watch those two guys.
There may still be some interesting Ohio State football to come in 2019, maybe
Stay tuned.
Of some interest to people who may be listening or watching this.
And it was good to see Chris Chuganoff and Gunnar Hoke both complete some passes, move the ball, and Ryan Day said that same thing, because coming into this game, that was one of the reasons why I thought they wouldn't score into the 70s, is because the scoring would stop in the fourth quarter, and boy, it did not. They put 27 points up in the second half with their backup quarterbacks, which, as you said, it's a MAC team, but it's, when you do that with your backup quarterbacks, your second and your third quarterback, and you're putting up 27 points in 2 quarters in the second half, that's something that helps both of those guys, and it's something we haven't seen from them yet this year until today.
Yeah. This is something that doesn't matter right now, but there could come a point later in this year when that decides the season, how those guys go. Because, we've talked about the fact that you lose Fields, and this then becomes arguably not a playoff team anymore. So the surrounding cast, the supporting cast, is so good that you don't need necessarily a Justin Fields to be a Big Ten championship caliber team. It's nice to have it, and I'm sure Ryan Day is glad that he has a Justin Fields.
You need something more than
player.
a Shea Patterson.
Yeah. Well, let's set a reasonable benchmark here. You need competent quarterback play. It doesn't have to be like explosive, game-breaking quarterback play. Explosive game-breaking quarterback play is great. It doesn't have to be that. I think you saw a significant step towards, there's maybe someone else on this team that can do what they would need them to do if called upon at some point later in the season.
Yeah, and that's, like you said, it's not something that may come into play at all, but it's better to have this under their belt now rather than needing it against Michigan State in the fourth quarter or something like that. The rest of the offense, put up over 600 yards of total offense. You got Ben Victor on that post pass that was a tremendous catch, 1 foot down in the back of the end zone. KJ Hill on a deep pass down the sidelines. We haven't seen them going deep this much until today. They wanted to take some shots, and obviously they were successful with that. They got Jeremy Ruckert on that corner route that they tried to hit Jake Hausman on, I think, last week or the week before. And just a very solid day. Another day, 223 yards for Justin Fields. I think his career high is still 234 yards, but you don't get the feel like if they needed him to throw for 370, they'd have no problem doing it. But because they're running the ball so well, they don't have to rely on him like they did Dwayne Haskins last year, where, if you see Dwayne Haskins 14 for 21 for 223 yards, you're like, well, that's kind of an off day. Did he get shut down? But, also Justin Fields throws 4 touchdowns, runs for 2 more, and is part of a 76-0 run to end the game for the Buckeyes after that 5-0 start. So the balance of this offense right now is exactly where you want it, and it's that you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, and there will come a time where we saw them. These 223 yards passing for Fields all in the first half. So project that, and you'll see that they could throw the ball all over the place if they wanted to. They just don't need to. But if the time comes, then I don't think anybody is worried about that.
Well, they have not been shut down in either the run game or the pass game at any point this year. You have not had a game where someone was able to turn them one-dimensional. That will happen at some point this year. Someone will be able to at least contain the run game. Where the run game was 5.4 yards per carry and Dobbins was 6.5. DeMarie McCall 10 yards on his 1 carry. There wasn't a lot of. There wasn't even when. I guess the rushing game was better than the 5.4 yards per carry you saw in the box score.
And that was with. The starters were in for 1 half.
Right. Yeah. And so you've got backup offensive line, backup running backs. They're not reaching real deep into the playbook for the second half. There was a lot of no sense in burning anything when you have. You might don't burn anything you might need next week, because you might need it next week. But
and everybody was just trying to get out of here at that point. Weather was coming.
It was a game that was. I mean, it had a very much a spring game kind of vibe to it, where it's like, all right, halftime is over. All of the players who are starters are out of the game and on the sidelines, and the stands have half emptied out, and there's absolutely nothing on the line in the second half. But hey, we get to watch some freshmen play, so that's kind of interesting. Let's see what this team might look like in a year or two. You got to see that, so that was kind of cool. But it had a very low stakes feel to the second half.
Now Justin Fields, his fourth game, he did fumble the ball, but Ohio State, he still has not lost a turnover. He still has not turned the ball over, because technically Ohio State recovered that fumble because it was a safety and not a touchdown. So it's a team recovery. So Justin Fields, and I don't know why we're saying this before the Nebraska game. You guys are probably going to kill me for it, but has yet to throw an interception or fumble the ball. And we'll cut this out, basically. I'll make sure to edit this out.
Going down 2-0 was a real team effort, it sounds like. Ryan Day talked about that play, and he said, they ran, basically it was like a post corner, so like a double move to Ben Victor. And, I mean, that's risky down there. That takes a while to develop, because you got to sell the post, and then you go out to the corner. And so the line has to hold their blocks. There was a linebacker blitz on that one that Day said basically J.K. Dobbins just got beat outside, didn't get outside in time. And he said that was not on Fields at all. That was coming on his blind side, nothing you can do.
When we talk about Ryan Day being aggressive at the end of half and how he isn't, that right there is a play that displays his aggression.
Yeah.
Where he has confidence in his offensive line and everybody to make this happen, but also confidence to just call the play, because there are some coaches who aren't going to do that.
Right.
They might call a go route, go ball, where it's just straight down field. To call a double move, you're putting a lot of faith in everyone. And J.K. was the one who he got his hands on the Sam blitz initially, but then he just got beat with the pass rush, and you saw what happened. But with what they're doing with Fields, it just feels like there's more to come, and it's whatever they want to do.
Yeah. Got a bunch of questions that have come in. Ryan says, Chase Young and the defense look completely different than last year back in the old Silver Bullets. I wrote about Chase Young after the game, which is to say I wrote about Chase Young during the game while the game was already over. 2 strip sacks in that second quarter, and he said he had one right before those 2 strip sacks, both of which turned into fumbles, both of which turned into touchdowns for the offense very quickly after that. There was actually one right before that where he came clean, blindsided the quarterback, and just went over the quarterback. The quarterback ducked at the last second, and he kind of went over him. And someone asked him, so, you've got those 2 forced fumbles, 2 sacks. Are you thinking more about those, or are you thinking more about the one you missed? And he goes, oh, you already know the answer to that. He is thinking about the one he missed, and that close to having 3 sacks instead of 2. He's got 7 on the year. The Ohio State school single-season record is 14. He's halfway there. He has played probably 2 quarters in 3 games and 3 quarters in 1 game, maybe. I mean, he's basically functionally played 2 full games, and he's halfway to the Ohio State school single-season record.
Yeah, and I remember talking to you before the season, asking you if you thought he would get the record. I'm pretty sure you said yes.
I was
under.
Yeah. Well.
I'm not rooting against him per se. I'm just rooting against you. But that, after Chase Young dropped that interception, he said he was going to go hit the jugs machine and work on his hands. How do you work on tackling quarterbacks that bend over? Do you tackle kids, running?
Yeah, I don't know. Just aim for the kidneys, I guess. I don't know. The amazing thing is he's got 7. He had the one he almost got today. He had one that he kind of got vultured away from him in the first game.
Sean Cornell stole one.
He could legitimately, with half a second here or there, have 10 sacks through 4 games.
Yeah, because he's got one. He had 1.5 in 2 different games, and then 2 in another.
2 in another, and then 2 today.
So
I mean, it is. You have, as an Ohio State fan, probably been spoiled with Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa, just this parade of great defensive linemen coming through here. Chase Young very well might be the best defensive lineman to ever play at this school.
Crazy, because in the beginning of the season, I said before the season, there's no way, don't expect Nick Bosa out of Chase Young, because it's just unfair. And I don't want to base everything on production, but that's kind of what you do with the defensive end. And he's blowing Joey Bosa's junior season production out of the water. I think Joey Bosa had 5 sacks, but he was, he had a bunch of tackles for loss. And then Nick Bosa, I think, was going to have this type of year last year, and was starting to have that before he was injured. I think he had 4 sacks in 2.5 games, or
something like that. Yeah.
6 tackles for loss. And what we're seeing from Chase Young, you don't see,
right?
Unless it's a Bosa, and he's not a Bosa. He might be better. There's an argument. I didn't think that would be possible.
Yeah, no, I think that there is an argument right now. There might not be an argument in a couple weeks. Like he is well on his way to completely obliterating every Ohio State sack record you can imagine. And it's not like teams haven't been scheming around him. It's not like teams aren't aware of him.
Who's this number 2?
It's not like they've just been, I'll just throw a running back on him. It'll be fine. It's fine. Like he is someone that teams have been game planning around, and he's still doing this.
That's the most impressive thing for me.
There is a lot about this Ohio State team that has exceeded what I thought they would be at this time of year. I had pretty high expectations for Chase Young. I did not think it was possible for Chase Young to exceed my expectations this year. He's doing it. He's doing it.
Maybe more than anybody else.
Yeah,
because everybody else is pretty much doing exactly what we thought, because we were a pretty good idea. But
Justin Fields has been more accurate than I thought he probably would be.
But I did not. I expected Chase Young to be one of the best players in the country. I don't know if I expected him to be clearly the best player in the country.
I mean, we've talked about them having Heisman candidates on this team. If the Heisman Trophy actually went to the most outstanding player instead of the best quarterback on a top 10 team, then Chase Young is probably right at the top of that list.
It's time to start that conversation, and I actually heard some people asking around about that after the game, even though we both despise what the Heisman has become and what it means and who it goes to. If you're ever going to give it to a defensive guy, and there's a great example right there of a guy who disrupts the game, who coaches actively and desperately plot against to no avail, and there's nothing they can do about it. And if you try to do too much, there's enough talent on the other side of the ball or on the other side of the line or up the middle. You see Devon Hamilton with 2 tackles for loss again today. The guy is outstanding. And you can't put too much focus on one guy, or else somebody else steps up, and you're seeing that from the entire defensive line.
The crazy thing about the defensive line is you've got this. We're talking about this great depth that they have. They're missing literally a full defensive line today. You had no Tyreek Smith, no Teron Vincent, no Robert Landers, no Jonathan Cooper. That is literally all the way across the line in first or second team guys. And they still have this incredible depth. You still are seeing Javonte Jean-Baptiste. You're still seeing Zach Harrison. You're still seeing Tyler Friday had a big play today. Larry Johnson is so much better at his job than almost anyone in the country. Yeah, you dear listener, Gerd is saying you. And I mean, let's be honest, it's probably true. Like Larry Johnson is, between the recruiting and the development, he is someone who gets puffed up as this incredible coach. And you hear lots of people talk about he's the best in the business. And that's just kind of like puffery that people, we think we have the best at every position. No, really. Larry Johnson is like incredible at what he does. And whatever he's getting paid, probably should be getting paid more.
And you see a lot of teams moving to the 3-4, and when Ryan Day was putting his defense together, what he wanted 4 down linemen, because that's what Larry Johnson does. That's what they've recruited. And it shows you the faith that he has in Larry Johnson, to where I'm molding this defense in my image, and I want to carry you over into that and help me do that. And I guess you do. And the way Greg Madison talks about Larry Johnson, Greg Madison was one of the best defensive line coaches of all time, and he's speaking as, sometimes it almost sounds like he's speaking as an apprentice to this master of Larry Johnson.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Greg Madison, one of the best defensive line coaches of all time. But when he got to Columbus, is he coaching the defensive line anymore? No, he is not. They have a defensive line coach.
Exactly, and there's nobody going to push him aside until he walks away.
And there is, this year, they basically told Larry Johnson, like, let us know what you want to do. And he wants his guys getting upfield. Yep. Can you imagine a situation where, as a defensive scheme, you would take your defensive lineman and tell Larry Johnson, no, friend, let's slant a bunch. Yeah. Let's not go upfield. let's go sideways. Let's try that. Can you imagine what that scheme might look like?
This is where we do the wavy lines and then show you clips from last year, and then you stop watching, listening.
Brad says he likes the lay them to waste philosophy that Day has now. No let up, carry that over to Nebraska and beyond, and let the rest of the country clutch their pearls.
Yeah, no, we said earlier today that Ryan Day seemed kind of angry this week. I didn't realize that he was angry because he hates Miami, and he just wanted to destroy them. I don't know if it was because New Hampshire was his fallback school, and he wanted to get into Miami, and they're like, no, son.
See, I called Miami a safety school on Twitter after they had the safety, and
there you go.
Got some blowback on that.
Oh, really? From the nerds?
Thomas says today was a wonderful world of wishes fulfilled, both in Madison and Columbus.
We talked about the Madison game before. That was easily predictable if you listen to us.
I think if you go back and listen to that Thursday podcast that we did previewing this game, where we kind of said,
it was almost like a eulogy, or like, this is what happens when you drink this poison. You're gonna die.
It was like the living will version of discussing Michigan's season. Like, well, you're not dead yet, but when you are, this is how it's going to happen.
Exactly, and it happened, and all of the. You're right. It was everything that could go wrong for Michigan. All of the bad stuff that we talked about happened. All of the good stuff for Ohio State that we've been talking about this season. Like, wait till Jameson Williams gets in the open field. Wait to just start throwing the ball up to Garrett Wilson. I think it was the first or second time they threw their quick screen to him. I'm like, just throw it downfield. Just throw it up to him and let him go get it, because he's remarkable at that. And it was a tale of two cities for sure, from Michigan and Ohio State today.
Ryan says Huskers struggling mightily against the Illini right now, in for a long week next week if our game and their game carry over. I mean, it was 14-0 Illinois when we came in here. And, I mean, Ohio State was down 5-0 and looked kind of disheveled and disjointed at the beginning of the game. And, at Illinois, I mean, I probably don't need to explain to an audience of Ohio State fans what a game at Illinois can look like and how it can turn into kind of a weird tire fire.
But, I wrote in the tip sheet, I think, that Nebraska isn't good enough to overlook anybody right now. And if they did happen to overlook Illinois because of what's coming next week, then bad things could happen. Because Illinois has enough talent to move the ball. And I saw Reggie Corbin getting some scores. And Nebraska's not good enough on defense to be able to shut anybody down and just go through the motions.
Right. Ohio State can kind of stumble through a quarter against a team like Miami and then just turn on the jets and go. You saw that with like Penn State against Buffalo, where they kind of stumbled through a half and then turned on the jets and put it away. Nebraska's not quite there yet, and Illinois is probably better than Buffalo. So you've got a little less margin for error there. I mean, we'll see how that game ends up. How that game ends up probably does not have a tremendous amount of bearing on what happens next week, because this is the old Ohio State gets everyone's best shot game, and nighttime on the road, Ohio State spending another week hearing about how great they are. I mean,
I think it's funny. We thought we were going to come in here before the game and just talk about Nebraska after the game.
Yeah.
And pleasantly surprised there was a lot to talk about from the game.
Yeah.
But there is still plenty to talk about with Nebraska.
Good news. We have multiple podcasts this week.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, that's a fact.
Tell me more, Tom.
Ryan says anything to be made of the lack of Austin Mack in the first 4 games. And, I mean, he's not in the box score. He did have a touchdown reception that got wiped out on a holding penalty on Jonah Jackson. So
yeah, I think we would like to see him scoring more, but he's playing a new position, than he did last year at X. And now with him over at Z, he never really suited me as, like, that kind of receiver. The super quick Terry McLaurin, Johnny Dixon, Chris Olave. I mean, that's why we thought Garrett Wilson would be over there. I don't know. Maybe he'll eventually go back to X, but I think they like everything else that he's doing. And you just never know, because they split the reps, where you could have 6 catches one week, none the next, just because the ball may not come to you while you are out there. And you have to be remarkably unselfish to play receiver in this offense. 1, because you have to block. 2, because you may not get any targets. And 3, if you do get a target, the transfer from Rutgers might be holding while you're scoring. So you have to be remarkably selfish and understand that as long as there's somebody from Rutgers on your team, you might get punched in the face.
You might. Yeah, once that Rutgers gets in there, it's hard. It takes a lot of antibiotics to get it out. 13 different guys had receptions today. 13 different guys had receptions today for Ohio
awesome.
State. And the leading receiver was Garrett Wilson with 4 catches.
Yeah.
So, we came into the year with KJ Hill needing, 50 catches or 48 catches or something. He might not get there just because the ball's getting spread around so much. It seems like he's had a lot of 2-3 catch games so far.
But I also think the numbers will start to go up in conference play when you need them more.
Sure. And I mean, you still haven't seen a lot of those kind of drag routes.
Yeah.
Which is where he generally thrives, where he makes his
I'll have to go back and see his deep route. I wonder if that was sort of a wheel out of the slot type of deal.
Yeah, I'm not sure. If Chase Young, Brad says, if Chase Young has a great game in primetime against Martinez, then the Heisman hype will commence outside of Columbus. I mean, that's entirely possible. And Ryan said, discussing the Heisman and Chase Young, he cleanly caught that INT and turned it into 6.
Well, that was a Heisman moment.
That would have been a short list.
For sure.
Short list thing. I mean,
he blew it. He doesn't deserve it. You don't see running backs dropping interceptions, do you?
Yeah, not all that often, no. Jason says, can the O-line get the QB sneak push like they have been going into the...
4 yards in that QB sneak.
That was amazing because it was like... And maybe this is just us having the angle that we have up in the press box, but you could just see the way... It was like Justin Fields was almost in a track stance behind the center. And maybe that's hard to see as a defensive player, but it was like super, super obvious what was happening. Took the snap and just went boom forward.
And it was 4th and 2.
It was 4th and 2, QB sneak, and it was like there was no question he was going to get it. He was just like a shot. Like it was like sometimes you see like defensive linemen jump the snap. He almost like jumped the snap. I mean, he obviously knows the snap count as the quarterback. Got it, boom, forward. And before anyone could react, he's through the line and got a couple extra yards to boot.
I don't think that'll be the last time we see that. If you're going to average 4 yards a carry with your quarterback sneak, you might want to do that. I don't know, first down, second down, third down against Michigan's defensive line. Pretty soon, that's going to turn into 2 yards, 4 yards, 30 yards, 60 yards, and then
It's amazing that for a huge chunk of last season, they averaged 4 yards a carry. I mean, that was basically like the standard Ohio State. There were a bunch of games where they didn't average 4 yards a carry. They averaged 2.8 or 3.5 for a bunch of games. So you line up under center and QB sneak it, and you do better than that on, and it's one play and yada yada yada. But that is, it was interesting to see that today, because that's one of those things that Urban Meyer got asked about last year, and got directly asked, well, why don't you just do that? When they're running it out of the shotgun, and it's like, that doesn't make any sense to snap it 5 yards back to move it 1 yard forward. And Urban told the reporter, I'll take that under advisement, and then did not take it under advisement. Ryan Day clearly did take it under advisement, and seemed to work out okay.
As we know, Ryan Day does listen to the media, which is nice and reassuring, refreshing. Anything else from the viewers today?
No, we are caught up on questions right now. So
anything else stand out to you? I thought Dallas Gant tackle, sack and a half today. Showed some nice burst on a blitz in there. I know it was good to see him out there. Taraja Mitchell played a lot. I think maybe had 4 tackles or so, or
a couple tackles.
Yep.
One TFL.
Just a lot of guys playing, so not a lot of stats. When you look at the rushing, I think 4 guys had over 30 yards rushing, and just a very complete team effort today. It would have been nice to see J.K. Dobbins rush for 100 yards again. Yeah. Would have been nice to see the offense rush for 300 yards for the second consecutive game for the first time in a few years. But, I'm not going to be critical about that when we could still be critical about the defense for giving up a field goal.
And this is the second game in, I feel like, 3 weeks when they've had 5 sacks and 12 or 13 tackles for loss. I mean, that's... you go down the list and it's like no one had an incredible day. No one had 6 tackles for loss today. But you just go Dallas Gant 1.5, Malik Harrison 1, Haskell Garrett 1.5, Ja'Shawn Cornell 1, Devon Hamilton 2, Baron Browning 2, Chase Young 2, Taraja Mitchell 1, Amir Reep and Antoine Jackson half a tackle for loss each. That's a lot of guys getting into the backfield, wrapping guys up, sticking them for a loss. I mean, that's a function of both depth and the fact that they have a lot of guys playing at a pretty high level right now.
Yep, you had 2 or 3 linebackers having tackles for loss. Just goes to show you that Al Washington's pretty good at coaching bad linebackers, based on everything that happened last year.
Amazing how that happened with all the same players. Eddie says, what about the corners, especially Jeff Okudah? Nice INT.
But it was an odd game starting out with the corners.
Jeff Okudah came out like...
He seemed lost.
It just seemed a little off at the start of the game, and then, turned back into Jeff Okudah, and it was fine.
And Ryan Day said that those weren't option plays, those pitches. I guess they'd probably just pitch plays, but that they would get them cleaned up. But clearly, Miami saw some stuff on film that they thought they could attack out wide, and they did for about 6 minutes.
Yeah.
And then it got wiped away, and then you get back to normal. And Buckeye Nation was able to breathe and relax, and then for the next 3 hours, you're just laughing giddily and...
Watch the blood flow.
Exactly.
What was interesting about that was... Last year, it felt like there were times when teams would be doing stuff and they would take Ohio State a while to adjust.
Yeah.
And it was like, got to get to halftime, and we'll get it figured out at halftime.
That's so
true. They ran it I think 3 times, and then it was like, and now this doesn't work anymore. Okay, we saw your magic trick, and now and now we know where the rabbit went.
Right. I think it was Wisconsin a few years ago where they kept doing the jet sweep, and then it took at halftime they decided how to switch and defend it. And the reactions, and maybe it's a product of having that 10th coach, that 10th assistant, and where they can do more and transition to the fixes. But that's a great point. You don't need the second half or the halftime to adjust. You do it on the fly. At least defensively they're doing it. Offensively, maybe that first game against Florida Atlantic, but I don't know that they're really interested in changing anything. They're just, what, let's just good old rock.
Yeah, there was
toughen people up.
Yeah, there was not a lot of strategy or adaptation in that first game because they just didn't want to show anything, and they didn't, and it has all worked out just fine since then.
So now 76 points in this game. They'll probably be near the top.
Yeah, would have been 77 if they hadn't missed that extra point.
Dominic DiMaccio, walk-on kicker, came out. I don't know if it was raining that hard, but like I said, I was in the tunnel.
It was, as someone who was out there, it was pretty much raining sideways.
It wasn't that bad in the tunnel where I was.
Yes, it was not raining all that hard indoors, but for a kicker who was kicking outdoors, first career PAT attempt. That's actually the first missed PAT for Ohio State since the Penn State game in 2016, which... Utah, they had the third longest active streak in the country. It was right around 200 consecutive makes. And I think it was Utah who had the third longest streak prior to them, missed one against BYU week 1. So it's it happens. And if you're going to miss a PAT, up 71 points in the fourth quarter is not the worst time for that to happen.
And, it's like when they say you should lose a game before the NCAA tournament, losing a game. And if you've got this long winning streak, you've got 16 games in a row, you're like, it's better to lose one because it's hard to win 22 games in a row. And so this is like that probably where you get it out of your system and now you can start a new streak and all you need to do is win 6 games in a row to win the NCAA tournament. And now the Buckeyes, 11 more games? And that's all.
Yeah, they only 11 more games.
It's crazy that we are a third of the way through the regular season. But it's always crazy because this sport moves like no other. And halftime of the next home game will be halfway through the home schedule. Holy cow.
They are through 3 of their 7 home games already, which is it just blows my mind every year that it's September and you're already, in terms of events, Ohio State football events in the Horseshoe, you have the spring game and 7 home games. Half of those are done now already, and it's still September. So enjoy this season. Please take some time and enjoy this season. Don't get too hung up on missed extra points. And
just as you wrote before the season.
Yep.
Enjoy the season. And before we wrap up, Tom, before the season, do you feel better about Ohio State's chances in Lincoln now than you did then?
Oh yeah,
right.
100%. Because you look at the team on the whole, the defense is better than I would have expected them to be.
We thought they would be. We knew they would be better, but
but we thought they would be better. But the baseline for where that better was pretty darn low. They have exceeded expectations, I think, on defense. The offensive line has been, I mean, again, we expected substantially better offensive line play. They have at least lived up to that, maybe exceeded that. Justin Fields, I think, has exceeded my expectations from him, especially in terms of accuracy. You know, I think that the running game, we've seen kind of what we expected to see. Accuracy in throwing the football, which is one of the things that was going to kind of determine whether this was a good season, a very good season, or a really season for the ages kind of season. He's a lot higher up on that ladder than I would have expected.
And there is still obviously room for him to grow with the accuracy. Sometimes there's some wayward throws and holding the ball too long, forcing coverage sacks where he could get the ball. So I think they're doing a pretty good job of protecting him. Most of the sacks I think he could probably avoid. But yeah, a pretty impressive start so far. You have to feel really, really good about where things stand. And yeah, this has been an interesting season so far, and we're just getting started, except it's almost over. So anything else on the old podcast there?
Well, Eddie says you guys are awesome, by the way, which, I mean...
That's a great thing to say at the end. You could have said that at the beginning and just repeated it, but whatever, we appreciate it.
If you do want to tell us we're awesome, you can do that in the ratings and reviews for the Buckeye Weekly podcast, which we had one negative review over the summer, which I tweeted out today because the review was on our Ohio State-Michigan sort of position-by-position breakdown, and it accused us of being... too over-the-top Ohio State homers because we were saying Ohio State was better in so many different positions than Michigan because we were saying remarkable, terrible stuff like Michigan's defensive line might not be very good this year. And, hey, you might need some running backs this year because you don't seem to have any, and that might be a problem. So
I would recommend people go listen to that because in that show as well, and it's a Ohio State-Michigan Tale of the Tape, we talk about what this offense could be down the road in terms of when we do a tail of the tape of quarterbacks. I believe we gave the edge to Michigan, but we're like, it would not be a surprise if by the end of the season, Ohio State and Justin Fields has surpassed that because of his potential. And same with the offensive line. Every area where we gave Michigan the edge, it's like, well, it's because of the unknowns of Ohio State. But those unknowns have so much potential, and you're seeing that now.
Well, and coaching was another area. And, I wonder how many Michigan fans would be willing to trade Jim Harbaugh for Ryan Day right now. Because I would bet they would trade quarterbacks, and I would bet they would trade running backs, and I bet they would trade defensive lines, and probably linebackers, probably secondaries.
Yeah. But they're all just... biased homers.
Yeah. So yeah, just thought that was worth revisiting today. Just popped into my head and thought, hey,
popped into my head.
Haven't mentioned that.
Written down in my hand.
Yeah.
Do not forget.
Yeah.
Gloat.
Tweet this out at halftime when Michigan is down by 35 points at Wisconsin. Like that would be a good time to revisit this point.
I think that'll do it.
That will do it.
Thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching on Facebook. We will talk to you again Tuesday sometime after we get done talking to the coaches, the players about Nebraska, which we will be there Friday night. And looking forward to it. Nebraska is a cool place.
Yeah, if you have not made that trip, that is worth a trip. It's a cool stadium, cool city, worth and just it's one of those like top 10, top 15 kind of college football stadiums that's worth seeing a game in at some point.
Yep. So we all look forward to that, and we will talk to you then.
She threw away the motel key. I wish she'd never